start. At number 10, the 10th best NBA player left in these playoffs is Karl Anthony Towns. Cat is the best player left in the NBA playoffs, and here's why. So the guy's averaging about 20 points a game, 9 rebounds, which you'd like it to be a little higher for a guy of his size and stature, but Cat has always been more of a spot-up shooter. I am really impressed with the fact that he missed a lot of time due to injury. I think about 16 games, comes back at the end of the regular season, and we saw it with Brandon Ingram with the Pelicans, never really found his rhythm after coming back late in the year. Like, a lot of times you come back late in the season, a team has kind of built a rhythm without you. You want to be playing your best basketball at the end. Cat struggled a little bit out the gates, but is back on. He dropped 27 and 12 the other night in Game 2 against the Denver Nuggets. He's played very, very well in this year's playoffs. He's a 40% shooting big. He's an efficient big. Again, not the type of down-low presence that we expect a lot of centers to be, but that's never really been his game. So we have to accept him for what he is, the role he plays to the Timberwolves, and that's why I've got Cat as the 10th best player left in these NBA playoffs. At number 9, the number 2, who at times has played like the number 1 on the Boston Celtics, it is Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, the 9th best player left in the NBA playoffs, and here's why. So offensively, he's been the best player for the Celtics in the postseason. He's averaging 24 and 6 assists this year. 6 rebounds this year in the postseason. Jaylen has shot very well from 3. He's good off the dribble, at least going to his right hand. The left hand, I know some people try to portray it as like this false narrative. It's a thing. He seemed to improve it as time has gone on, but whether or not Jaylen Brown can consistently beat you off the dribble going left still remains to be seen, especially as the Celtics go deeper in the playoffs. I think they're going to wax Cleveland just like they waxed Miami. As I said about the Celtics coming into the playoffs, they shouldn't have more than 2 losses going into Eastern Conference Finals against either Indiana or against the New York Knicks. But Jaylen Brown has been a guy who, listen, we've seen a lot of playoff games where Tatum has been amazing, and other games where, okay, the number 2 guy, the Robin to Batman is going to have to pick up the load. Jaylen Brown's done that time and time again. Celtics really haven't faced any adversity. If you want to say losing the home game to the Heat, but we all knew Boston's way better. They're going to win this series. As great as Spoelstra is, he just didn't have the bodies to compete with Boston, or the talent to compete with the Celtics in that series. Jaylen Brown's been really good. That's why he is my 9th best player left in these playoffs. At number 8, a team I hate. Didn't need for that to rhyme. Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, the 8th best player left in this year's playoffs, and here's why. So if you look at his numbers, he's averaging 29, 5, and 4 in these playoffs, but 29, you're like, wow, Donovan Mitchell's showing up and showing out. Some of that is a little skewed because he, and to his credit, I want to take credit away from him for doing this. In Game 6 and 7, went crazy, dropped over 50 in Game 6, I believe dropped about 40 in Game 7 to lead the Cavs. By the way, down at 1.18 to the Orlando Magic against a great Magic defense, a limited Cavs offense. Didn't think Cleveland would come back. I was proven wrong. They did. Donovan Mitchell has, again, I've been critical of him in the 22 and 23 playoffs, but prior to that, this is a guy who has 50-point playoff games on his resume. This is a guy who has outplayed prime Westbrook in playoff series. He's gone back and forth, outplayed Jokic in series. Like, this guy is by and large showed up when his number is called in the postseason. Can he, again, the Cavs aren't beating the Celtics, but could he push it to a Game 6? I'd be impressed if he did. Donovan Mitchell, the 8th best player left in this year's playoffs. At number 7, the number 2 guy on the Dallas Mavericks, it is Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, the 7th best player left in this year's playoffs, and here's why. So he's averaging 25, 5, and 4. This is a guy who I've consistently said has the greatest. I love Steph Curry. He's my favorite player ever, but Kyrie's got the greatest handle I've ever seen in my life. I've been critical of Kyrie off the court in the past, but I've always said he is one of the most efficient small players in NBA history. I mean, he's a 50-40-90 guy. He's a great three-point shooter. Obviously can get whatever he wants off the dribble. I think he's the greatest non-dunking finisher among guards in NBA history. Like, again, as far as skill, you could maybe put Kyrie in the top 10 of all time. I'm dead serious on that. Now, it hasn't always come out to great production in the playoffs, at least with him being the number 1 guy. The good news is he's not the number 1 guy. Everybody knows the man in Dallas is Luka. So Kyrie's sort of being able to play the same role that he played in Cleveland when the Cavs won a title in 2016 is really incredible. It's amazing to me that if you look at the 8 teams left in the playoffs, among superstars or even stars, Kyrie's the oldest guy, and he's barely into his 30s. It just goes to show you, like, the guard, I'm not saying LeBron and Steph and KD have totally passed the mantle, but they are in the process of doing so with some of these younger players. So the fact that Kyrie is like the old guy is really weird. But Kyrie's been great in these playoffs. He had an awesome game 4 against the LA Clippers, albeit they lost. But Kyrie has been really good. I'd like to see the Mavs getting more involved in this series. Kyrie Irving, the 7th best player left in this year's playoffs. At number 6, the guy he lost to just last night and is playing in this series. It is the guy who's probably going to finish 2nd for league MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA. The 6th best player left in this year's playoffs, and here's why. So he's averaging 27, 6, and 6 this year in the postseason. He is, again, we talk about efficiency. He's been an efficient player, over 50% from the field this regular season. A very good case can be made that he's the league MVP, as I just mentioned. The guy, again, was top 2 in scoring, top 3 in scoring this season, leading the youngest team in the NBA to the postseason, doing so, again, with a lot of young guys around him. Giddey, Holmgren, Jalen Williams, Lou Dort, very, very young Oklahoma City team, coached by an excellent coach and Mark Dagnall. But SGA has been awesome this year, took care of the New Orleans Pelicans quickly. If SGA had the playoff history of like I don't know, let's say this is 2019, of a Klay Thompson, he might be in my top 3 or 4 because, again, we know what Game 6 Klay was. Part of me is just living in the past. As a Warriors fan, I try not to do that. But the point is, SGA has been great. If he had more of an extensive playoff history in recent years, again, not all that's his fault because he's young and the Oklahoma City Thunder were rebuilding. I think this guy and this team has the potential to really, really be dangerous over the next decade. Young talent everywhere. Sam Presti is one of the best executives, I think, in sports. There's not that many people, again, in professional sports that knows how to accumulate young, talented guys, put them together, be able to mesh them together, put together a requisite roster that can go deep in the playoffs. Oklahoma City, again, as I said earlier, we don't have that many truly great teams in this year's playoffs. Doors open for the Thunder to become the youngest NBA championship team of all time. We'll see if they're able to do it. But their leader is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and he is my 6th best player in this year's playoffs. At number 5, we move the top 5. To me, one of the most weirdly underrated players in the NBA. I've been a fan of his for a long time. It is Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, the 5th best player in the National Basketball Association in these playoffs that is still playing, and here's why. So, again, as I said coming into this segment, this is a mix of what you've done in this year's playoffs as well as what you've done recently. So within the last 2 to 3 years in the postseason, Jason Tatum's been great. Took a team to the finals after being first-team All-NBA in 2022. He got a team to the conference finals after once again being All-NBA in 2023. Doing so, mind you, with the second 50-point Game 7 in NBA history to eliminate the Philadelphia 76ers. This is a guy, if you look at his numbers when facing elimination, he's one of the better players, I'm not kidding, in history when facing elimination. Efficient, great scoring outputs, excellent defense, and that's really what I want to focus on because Tatum, if you look at his numbers, only, again, shooting percentage isn't good, didn't play that well the other night, 21 points with 10 rebounds, 5 assists. He's getting other guys involved. You see the 10 rebounds. He has a defensive rating, folks, of 100. That, my friends, is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable for a star player, superstar player, which I believe Tatum to be in this year's playoffs. We'll see if he's first team All-NBA for a 3rd straight year. There's a potential chance that he could be. I would vote him to be in that position. Tatum's been, again, if you're asking Tatum to be Jokic or prime LeBron, he's not that. But is he at the very tip top of tier 2? You better believe it. I think he's one of the 5 best players left the playoffs. Gets over-criticized, beyond over-criticized as far as I'm concerned. Jason Tatum, the 5th best player left in these NBA playoffs. At number 4, if you were playing a slightly better, I'd move him higher, but this is where I've got him right now. It is Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic, the 4th best player left in this year's playoffs, and here's why. So, Luka's numbers, it's like Luka's not been as good, but you're still like, dang, numbers still look pretty good. 28, 9, and 8, which comes somewhat close, not the points per game, but somewhat close to his regular season averages. Listen, this is somebody, I get he's had the knee injury, but to his credit, has been really committed to the defensive end, had a great series on that end of the floor against the Clippers. Would like to see him be a little bit more impactful on that end as the series goes on against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But let's not forget, folks, this is a guy who, in closeout games, averages well over 30 points per game, basically like a 30-point triple-double in closeout games. Again, Oklahoma City, make sure this puppy doesn't get to a Game 7. Make sure, if you're going to beat the Mavericks, do it in 5 or 6. Don't let it get to a Game 7. because this guy is more than capable. We've seen his history of absolutely obliterating you in the 7th and decisive game or in any closeout game of any kind. Luka's improvement on the defensive end, Luka's over the course of the second half of the season and over the duration of the Clippers series, we'll see what happens in this series, but his commitment to playing more of a team-oriented style of basketball. Listen, a guy who a lot of people think is the greatest player ever, Michael Jordan, scored a lot of points, won MVPs, won scoring titles, but he didn't start winning NBA titles until he committed to, again, the triangle offense, with Phil Jackson, Tex Winter, but again, committing to more of a team-oriented, move the basketball, more of an up-tempo style. That is exactly what the Dallas Mavericks have employed. We'll see if they do. I believe they will. Luka Doncic, the 4th best player left in this year's playoffs. Some may think I have him too low. Some may think not too high. I don't think anybody thinks I have him too high, but I'll make a case. At number 3, third best player left in the playoffs is Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic, the 3rd best player left in the postseason, and here's why. So again, the man is averaging 27, 15, and 9. So he's been on a 3-game stretch. I didn't think he played great in Game 5 to close out against the Lakers. He has not played well at all the last 2 against the Timberwolves. And again, that to me factors in. At this point, I think you can kind of guess who the top 2 are above Nikola Jokic. But I think when you look at his overall playoff production, it's been really good in stretches and not that impactful in others. Like, the numbers are still there. But again, it reminds me a lot of Jokic's 2022 MVP season where it's numbers look good, but get absolutely mopped by Golden State. I mean, sure he's the MVP? It reminds me of that a little bit now. Again, Nikola Jokic, in general, I still give him the title of best player in the world. If they get knocked out in round 2, we'll see if someone like an Anthony Edwards were to strip that title. Only time will tell. But listen, this is a guy who is a triple-double threat every night, is an efficient triple-double threat every night, gets his teammates involved. The entire Nuggets offense is fixated around his strengths and his abilities. Again, I think Denver's going to turn around. This is the defending finals MVP. This is a guy who, in about 30 minutes, I think is going to be announced to have his 3rd league MVP. Not many guys in NBA history have done that. Nikola Jokic is the 3rd best player left in this year's playoffs. The only reason he's that low is because, again, some of these performances have been outright awful. That has knocked him down a peg. At number 2, it is Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks. Jalen Brunson, the 2nd best player left in this year's playoffs, and here's why. I'm about to do a Jalen Brunson segment as soon as I get done right here with Bryce's Best 10, with some of the stats that are mind-boggling on what Jalen Brunson's doing. But just over the duration of the 6 games that Jalen Brunson's played to start these playoffs, he's averaging 36, 8, and 4 on crazy efficient shooting, and again is doing so with outstanding numbers in the 4th quarter clutch situations of these games. Just the other night against the Pacers, dropped 21 points. 21 in the 4th quarter against the Indiana Pacers. Listen, this is a guy, a lot of folks, myself included a year ago, criticized Mark Cuban, criticized Nico Harrison of the Dallas Mavericks and said, hey, why didn't you bring him back? Well, in hindsight, it's kind of like, well, Jalen's a ball-dominant player. Luka's a ball-dominant player. I'm not sure Jalen would have been able to reach his full potential unless he was in a situation like the New York Knicks where it's Villanova galore. It's Josh Hart. It's Dante DiVincenzo. It's these guys around him, these good shooters. Again, OG Anunoby, Miles McBride, like good ancillary role players, and an excellent head coach in Tom Thibodeau, who still plays his players too many minutes. That'll come back to bite him. Point is, though, the clutch performance, the floater, the three-point shot, like the guy is... I never thought I'd talk about Jalen Brunson as one of the 5 best players in the NBA in one-on-one get-a-bucket situations. I'm sorry. What I've seen lately, guys scoring at will. And you can throw any defender you want him. He's scoring at will. Philadelphia tried to stop him. Indiana, who's not a good defense at all, I think he's going to feast on them. Tried to stop him. Didn't work. Listen, this is a guy who's clutch. This is a guy who's a great leader, who's a smart player, typical Villanova guy, typical dad played in the NBA type of guy. Jalen Brunson to me right now, the 2nd best player left in this year's playoffs. That leaves only one man and one man only. And again, we're midway through the playoffs. We'll see if this changes. But as we see here today, the best player left in these NBA playoffs is Anthony Edwards. Absolutely. Anthony Edwards, the best player left as of right now in this year's playoffs. And here's why. So let's pump the brakes on the Jordan comparisons. This is, worst case, the 2nd greatest basketball player who ever lived. That said, how about 32? Can I interest you in 32, 6, and 5 on his incredibly efficient shooting, great shooting for the field and from 3 and from the free throw line. Now, listen, this is a guy who is he is there to take, again, this comparison I do kind of get to Jordan, to Kobe, to other guys of this sort of ilk. This is a guy who's ready to come in your building and absolutely rip your heart out of your chest. That is what Anthony Edwards is here to do. It's a guy who's got a bag on offense, a great handle. Again, is an explosive finisher at the rim, good in the mid-range, excellent three-point shooter. He's really, really worked on his three-point shot, and I give him a ton of credit for that. He can lock you up and lock you down on the defensive end of the floor. Listen, the leadership quality is there. Again, we talk about faces of the league. I think there's been 7, I said this a week ago, since 1984. 7 faces of the league since 1984. Magic, Bird, Jordan, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, Steph. Guys who have the charisma, have the swagger. They got to have the game. Otherwise, you can't be the face of the league if you don't have the game. The MVPs, the championship. That's what all those guys have. Anthony Edwards doesn't have the MVPs of the championship yet, but the league is desperately searching for that American-born player. And listen, there is an advantage in a North American league to be an American-born star. Even if you're a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you come from Canada, that still counts. But the league's looking for that big personality to kind of take the mantle as the face of the NBA. It's weird to have a guy in Minnesota threatening to do that, but Anthony Edwards, given his playoff performance this year, his continued growth and improvement over the last few years in the postseason, and by the way, he's 22. That's the scary aspect. He's not even close to his prime. We'll see this kid continue to get better, continue to get more opportunities, and who knows? A championship could be in his future as soon as a month from now. This kid's special. He's got everything you want in a superstar player. Anthony Edwards, the best player left as of right now this year in the NBA playoffs. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.